Hey everyone, welcome to this week's GuitarLessons.com live lesson. Today, or this week, we're going to talk about hammer-ons and pull-offs. Super essential topic for any guitar player. Doesn't matter what style of music you play, doesn't matter what level you're at. We're going to go through some basic technique for hammer-ons and pull-offs. That way, if anybody's struggling with them, they can get up to speed. But I'm also going to show you several exercises that you can use to get your hammer-ons and pull-offs, or legato technique, as we call it, up to whatever level you want to be at. If you want to be at, Joe Satriani or anyone else, Alan Holdsworth, somebody like that, these tips and exercises are going to enable you to get your technique up, your legato technique up to that level to where you can use it extensively when you're playing however you want.
One thing, just what Nate just said there reminded me, I didn't know that hammer-ons and pull-offs together were called legato.
Oh.
So I only found that out recently, and people would talk about them separately, and I didn't realize they were the same thing. So they're the same thing, in case you didn't know.
Semantics.
Semantics, exactly, yeah. So we will be answering questions at the end, so if you have questions, make sure, those of you guys who are members, please get those questions in. I also noticed that there's a bunch of questions in the forums, so we're going to grab those too.
I did peek in a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll try and get to as many of those as we can too. Awesome. And we have a couple of resources, one being just the PDF of this lesson, kind of stuff that Nate's going to be talking about. And then we have an MP3, which is just the jam track that we're going to play over today.
And it's just Mixolydian groove, or you can think about it as being in C major or like G Mixolydian for the most part. And it's inspired by Joe Satriani, song House Full of Bullets. If you haven't heard that, go check it out. It's a great, I picked this jam track because that song is a great example of legato in a rock context. So.
Cool.
Or hammer-ons and pull-offs.
I'm going to do my best to use hammer-ons and pull-offs throughout.
No, I'm going to be using. My right hand is going to be on vacation for this jam track anyways as we go through this.
Okay, cool. Well, should we jump into it then?
I guess that's a yes. Cool. Live fade out.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing I want to go over with you guys is just the basic technique of hammer-ons and pull-offs. That way, if you're new to this, or like some of the things I saw on the forum, if people are having certain troubles with certain aspects of hammer-ons and pull-offs, then hopefully this will clear all of that up for you. You'll get past the basic technique and then start to be able to incorporate it in your playing and get faster and cleaner if that's your goal, for lead guitar with legato stuff. And I have a couple of tips here for you, and I just wanted to get through these first, just for that reason, to make sure that all the exercises you're going to go through later in your daily practice routine that are here on the PDF are sounding as good as possible and you're not having any trouble with them. So the first tip I have for you is to separate the challenge of hammer-ons and pull-offs at first, so you don't just jump into like trying to learn a whole lick that uses hammer-ons and pull-offs, or playing through a whole scale that uses hammer-ons and pull-offs, and you're frustrated. It's like, oh, why doesn't this sound good, right? So at first, when you're very first starting to learn how to incorporate hammer-ons and pull-offs in your playing, separate the challenge. Just take hammer-ons first by themselves. Don't be in a hurry. Get it down really well, and then move on to pull-offs and go through kind of the same process with there. And I have a couple tips for you for each one, for hammer-ons and pull-offs, and they're kind of the same. There's only one different one for pull-offs because I found out this kind of helps a lot of people that are struggling with pull-offs. But as far as hammer-ons go, we're going to get to that first. And the first tip I have for you for those is experiment with the velocity for best sounding notes. And that may sound kind of weird or technical to you, but when I play legato, I'm not necessarily, especially on hammer-ons, I'm not coming down super hard. Like it doesn't take much effort, right? I am coming down fast though, and that's what I mean by velocity. You have to come down fast enough to make that second note ring out. And let me just get in here close. If you don't know what a hammer-on is, it's just take any note and play it on the fretboard. It doesn't matter where it is. And I'm just going to use my index finger. So you pick that note. And then you take any of your other fingers. In this case, I'm going to use my third finger. And you don't pick it. You just kind of use it like a hammer to come down onto the string, right? And I'm not doing it super hard, As a matter of fact, if you do it too hard, and I think this was nose pull-offs, but being sharp and flat when you play legato is an issue. Yeah. We'll get to later, but you just come down not hard enough to make it sound out. If you don't come down with enough velocity, check out what happens. You just mute the string, right? Yeah. If you come down too hard or too fast, it's here how it just went sharp. Yeah. I don't know if you heard that. I'll do it again.
And it's still better, but it definitely doesn't sound clean like you want, right?
Yeah, so for hammer-ons and pull-offs, we'll get to it for pull-offs later, but experiment. Just literally sit down, pick, hammer, and experiment with how hard is not hard enough or how fast is not fast enough. And then just keep doing it harder until you start to get that kind of sharp pitch and be like, oh, that's too hard, back it off. And the ideal spot is somewhere right there in the middle. So just experiment with that. That's number one. Just don't even worry about playing through scale. Don't worry about pull-offs. To get your hammer-ons going, just experiment with the velocity. How much is enough? And try to keep the other strings that you're not playing quiet. My fingers on this hand are muting the high strings up here. And then my thumb can reach over and mute the low E string. And my thumb right here on this picking hand is muting the low E and A strings too. So that's the first tip for hammer-ons. And the second tip is concentrate on even volume relative to the note that you're picking. And that kind of goes hand in hand with finding the right velocity. If you play, it made a sound, but it wasn't equal to the picked note that I played first, right? That's pretty equal. The goal of legato in general and hammer-ons and pull-offs is to create a smoother sound. And I think of violins. I think of a lot of piano lines also when I think of this. So instead of picking each note, it's just a nice way to smooth it out and make it a little smoother sounding.
Yeah.
So one thing you're going to want to really focus on when you're developing your hammer-ons is to get the note you're hammering onto equal in volume and intensity, if that's what you want. You want to be able to control the volume of that hammered on note. See, that was a little harsh to me, that last one I just did. There you go.
Yeah.
Tip number 3, I didn't learn till a lot later in my guitar playing, probably like 10 years ago, and I've been playing for a long time, but I was surprised that I didn't. because it seems to be such a big problem with people that, like, say you're playing through a G major scale using legato hammer-ons. I just played G Mixolydian because that's what the song was in. So G major scale. For the longest time, I didn't even think that I didn't have to keep my index finger planted while I was hammering onto other notes. So if I play this note with my index finger, pick it, and then hammer on, I always left my index finger planted.
Right.
And same thing for this next note. If I hammered on again, I left my index finger planted. It wasn't a big deal for me because I have like pretty average size hands, but if you have small hands, this could be a real problem when you're starting to get into hammer-ons and pull-offs. So let's do kind of the same thing. So pick the first note, doesn't matter which fret, index finger, then hammer on with your second finger, then hammer on with your fourth finger in that major scale shape. Just skipping a fret in between each note, right?
Yeah.
Now, you don't have to leave your index finger planted. Check it out.
Yeah.
You don't have to leave your second finger planted either once you do that. If you're ascending up a scale.
And if you watch, you can see your wrist is moving where when it was planted, it wasn't.
It wasn't. My wrist was taking on the stress of my fingers staying planted. But this isn't.
Yeah.
It's really easy. Like there's not really even a stretch. The biggest stretch is just that right there.
Yeah.
And instead of something like that, which is nasty, right?
Yeah.
So tip number 3, word for word, is plant or don't plant your fingers when you're using hammer-ons. In this case, the same thing goes for pull-offs. So we'll get to that more later. So if you're going to a scale, even just a regular minor pentatonic scale, right? If you have that lowest root note, say we're playing a G minor pentatonic, you don't have to leave that index finger planted. I do just because it's a little bit easier.
It's a little easier if you're going to go back and forth.
Yeah. But if you have smaller hands and you're having trouble making stretches like that, don't feel like you have to leave your finger planted when you're developing hammer-ons.
That's a cool tip. I've never thought of that before.
Yeah.
That's a cool tip.
And one of my favorite guitar players, I guess he has smaller hands than me because he had trouble with it.
Okay.
And he's like, I don't even bother with that. I just kind of do this rolling motion.
Ah. It looks smooth when you do it.
It feels different, and it's kind of a new coordination. You have to work on the timing of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's worth developing if you have small hands and you're struggling with hammer-ons and pull-offs.
That's very
cool.
cool.
What that's worth. Now, all of those same tips, those 3 tips apply to pull-offs too, so I'll go through them, but there's one more that I want to address with pull-offs. So the first one was, the only different one I guess we'll go over first. It's pull off and down or out to perform a secondary hammer-on. And let me show you what I mean by that. Most people, when they think of pull-off, let me get down here. They think of just picking a note, having their index finger planted on the note they want to pull off to, picking it, and then kind of pulling off down and out, right? Basically, you're just plucking the string with whatever finger you start that pull off on, right? And that's generally the way I do it, just because I have like medium-sized hand. Stretching generally isn't too much of a problem. So my index finger is planted. But you can do the exact same thing. You can either pull off and out and have that index finger planted, or you can perform a pull off and a hammer-on at the same time, which takes the stretching out of the equation.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes it a little bit smoother. I don't do it a lot, but I do like the idea of that.
I've never done that before.
Yeah, and it was a means to an end because this guy, one of my favorite players, he does like 4-note per string scales a lot. He's like, I can't make those stretches, so what you do is just have it pick your note, and then you can either do the pull off traditionally, down and out, or you can do a hammer on with whatever note is below at the same time you're doing it. It's a little bit easier to get volume that way, but it is a coordination that you're going to need to develop, just like any other technique on the guitar. You just need to be aware of it, kind of experiment with what works for you. Now, the other 3 tips here are the exact same ones as the hammer-on, so I'll just go through those with you quick. Experiment with the velocity. How hard is enough to pick this note and then pull off? If it's not enough, if you're not doing enough, you're not going to get any noise out of it. You make it a little bit like still ringing out, but you need to think about that. That finger is being just a pick. Like if you're picking this string with your thumb, this finger that's doing the pull off is taking the place of that. If you're using the non-secondary hammer method, right? So experiment with how much is enough. if you do it too hard,
Yeah.
it's going to be sharp and it's going to sound really unsmooth, which is not what you want to go for. The whole point of legato is to make it as smooth as possible. And here's 2 picked notes. Here's 2 legato notes. Or 1 picked and 1 legato.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind and just experiment with how much force is enough, how much velocity is enough, and how much, is too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
This 4th tip, concentrate on even volume relative to the picked note. And that kind of goes hand in hand with that last thing that we just talked about. Just make sure, if you're wanting to go for a smooth sound from note to note, be really aware of when you're developing your hammer-ons and pull-offs, in this case, by themselves before you get into any exercises. Try to make them as even sounding as possible. And number 4, again, and this kind of comes in and ties into the first point, plant or don't plant your index finger behind, or whatever finger is behind with the second note you're going to do the pull-off from. So you can plant it like this, or don't plant it. And do it kind of that secondary hammer-on. It's really up to you, but the important thing is that you take some time and don't get ahead of yourself. Don't try to, to be the world's best legato player before you get some basic things down, and learn what works for you best with these tips for developing legato. Now, what we're going to do is kind of get into some daily exercises that I've found really helpful. I use a lot of these for warm-up exercises, but they're really useful in developing your legato technique after you've gotten the basics down that we just went through. And let me encourage you, I don't concentrate on these exercises a lot. They're kind of a means to an end. Once you get them to a certain point, forget them except for maybe warm-up exercises, or if you haven't played guitar for a few weeks, if you're on vacation or something, they're great to come back to. But as soon as you can, get into learning solos, improvising, working on runs, working on scales, things like that. But having said that, let's go ahead and go through these exercises. And these are kind of progressive. I would say the first one is kind of beginner, the second one is intermediate, and the third one is like upper intermediate.
Okay.
Something like that. So. And all of these, by the way, I use, like, if I'm showing up to a cover gig or something and I have like 5 minutes before we go on, then I use something like this just because it warms up all my fingers really quickly. So the idea behind the first one, let me see actually what fret am I here, 5. Okay, pick any string, any fret on the guitar, doesn't matter. I'm going to be on the 5th fret of the D string. That's going to be my starting point. And what I'm going to do is trill between that note and the note with my second finger right there on the 6th fret. I'm going to leave my index finger planted here and you'll see why. But basically pick, hammer, pull off over and over again. You only need to pick initially on the very first note.
Yeah.
And just go as fast as you need to. This is a great exercise for getting your hand in shape, number 1. Number 2, building your coordination. Number 3, you can even work on building your speed. And just making sure your hammer-ons and pull-offs are clean. And you're linking hammer-ons and pull-offs too, right? So make sure you take that time and develop them each one on their own. Just do that for 20, 30 seconds, a minute, then switch to your first and third fingers. And this is we're gonna go through all the different finger combinations, but this is a really great way to see which fingers need some work. And if you need to spend some more time developing hammer-ons and pull-offs with any particular pair of fingers. But just do that again for 20 or 30 seconds. Pick, hammer, pull, over and over. Doesn't have to be fast. Concentrate on making the notes even. Are you doing it too loud? Making it go sharp? Are you not doing it hard enough? And is the note dying?
Yeah. Because you could keep doing that forever.
Yeah. Well, with these fingers, we'll get into the other ones, and it's like,
yeah.
But yeah, just go naturally through the progression of fingers, then do 1 and 4. Doesn't matter which fret you do it on.
Yeah.
Hammer on, pull off. And then it starts to get tricky here. We're going to switch. We've already done 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Now you're going to switch to where you're holding down the string with your second finger. And still, my index finger is getting any note on the 5th. Second finger is getting any note, 6th. Third finger is getting any note on the 7th. Pinky is getting any note on the 8th. So I'm switching to where my second finger is holding down the note. and I'm just trilling between my second and third fingers. And this is where it starts to get a lot more difficult. You're going to notice that, like, hey, I really need to build some coordination between my second and third fingers because they're a little bit difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm keeping that G string quiet, but you can hear it clicking every time. Like that.
Yeah.
So make sure you keep the strings quiet that you're not using. And do that for as long as you want.
And you're keeping that quiet with your right hand, right?
Yeah, I'm keeping it quiet with my picking hand here.
Yeah.
And then switch to 2 and 4. And then switch to 3 and 4. And this is going to be really tough if you've never done this before, and you're going to be like, oh dear God, this is, really tough. How am I ever going to do this? But if you spend a couple weeks on this, you're going to notice that your coordination and your strength with your hammer-ons and pull-offs is going to get a lot better, and you're going to be able to move on to some more things like learning solos, improvising, using your legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs with scales, things like that.
Right.
So that's the first exercise. I literally will grab this if I'm watching TV or something, or if I know I have to go to a gig, or if I'm at the gig. Just go with it. And I'll just throw this in here right now. Somebody in the forum, I think it was in one of the emails today, they said switching back and forth between acoustic and electric helps me with my legato or hammer-ons and pull-offs a lot. And it does. It builds a lot of strength to where if you're practicing like exercises like that on acoustic, don't hurt yourself, don't strain yourself. But once you play that on 12s that come, 12 gauge strings that come on most acoustic guitars, playing it on 9s or 10s is going to be a breeze for you.
Totally.
Cool. The second exercise that you might want to incorporate into your daily practice, if you're more of an intermediate player, kind of focuses on the same stuff, but it focuses on coordination a little bit more. And I'll show you. It's still a trill-based exercise with finger pairs. So we're going to be using 1 and 2, then 1 and 3, then 1 and 4. Then you could do 2 and 3, 2 and 4, then 3 and 4.
Right.
But it's the same idea. But we're only going to, on the way up, we're going to pick the first note, any string, start on the low E string, any fret, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Start on the 5th fret. Pick that note, then hammer on. Move to the next string, do the same thing. Pick, hammer on. Next string, pick, hammer on. Next string, pick, hammer on. Next string, pick, hammer on. So that's what you're doing going up. Coming back down, you're going to pick the highest note, second finger, then pull off to your first finger. Do the exact same thing on the next string. Same thing all the way down. Pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull. And this is kind of, I guess, level 2 of the last exercise we did. So going up, oops. And you just do that as long as you want. You can do it up and down several times. So you're feeling comfortable, as slow as you need to initially. And then when you're ready, switch to 1 and 3. So same exact thing. Pick, hammer, next string over, pick, hammer, next string over, pick, hammer, next string over, pick, hammer, all the way up. Make sure it's even sounding and smooth. And then on the way back down, pick and pull. Pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull, pick, pull. It's not very musical, but what we're focusing on right now is just developing technique and getting the strength and coordination you need to do hammer-ons and pull-offs well. You can go 1 and 4. 2 and 3. Two and 4. And then 3 and 4. And you can spend as much time on any finger pair that you need to. If you need to spend more time, between 2 and 3 or 2 and 4, go ahead and do that. You know, if your first and second fingers are really fast and good and up to speed, spend time on what needs work.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, the last kind of exercise it is musical because it is a scale, but it's really focusing on building strength and technique more than being musical. It's just, that's just a chromatic skill. And the reason I like the chromatic skill so much is because it works every single finger on every string. So if you need to warm up, or if you only have a very limited amount of time that you can work on your legato technique, hammer-ons and pull-offs, then this is a really effective exercise because it works out every single finger on every string. And let's go ahead and start maybe on a C note, because it's nice and central, because this scale covers a lot of the fretboard. What you're going to do is play that first note, pick it, then hammer on with each finger, all 4 fingers, right?
Yeah.
And that's the idea pretty much for every string in this scale. So just pick, hammer, 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 and you can leave the index finger planted like we were talking about.
Yeah.
Or we can leave, come off. Right. It's really up to you, whatever's more comfortable for you. Once you play those 4 notes, go back a fret and over 1 string and do the exact same thing. And if this is new to you, I'd recommend taking it 1 string at a time. So pick, hammer, 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 back and over a string, pick, hammer, hammer, hammer. And just work on those 2 strings. And if you want to add the next string in, go over a string and back a fret, exact same thing. So get to where you can reach back with that index finger. Back. Same exact thing on the next string, back a fret. Pick, hammer, hammer, hammer. And when you get to the B string, this is the only time you don't reach back 1 fret. You go over to the very next fret, or the next string on the same fret. So pick, hammer, hammer, hammer. And then we get back to our regular pattern. On the high E string, go to the back 1 fret, pick, hammer, hammer, hammer. Yep. And then you have to add 1 note to get back up to a C at the end, just slide up. So that's the whole thing.
Very nice.
And that's not as easy as it looks.
No.
Not to make it smooth and clean, but that's only half of it. Once you can do that with hammer-ons, you need to come back down ascending with pull-off. So what I would probably do, start on that C, pick, pull off, pull off, pull off, and this is the only time we need to slide 1. So, and then reach up 1 fret, pick, pull off, pull off, pull off, and then from the G to the B, we don't change frets, we don't have to worry about it. Pick, pull off, pull off, pull off, and then reach up with your pinky 1 fret higher, pick, pull off, pull off, pull off. Same thing, reach up with your pinky 1 fret higher. Same thing, up with your pinky, pick, pull off, pull off, pull off. So. Ooh. And it's a very effective exercise. It's going to be a pain in the butt, I guarantee you, if you've never done it before, but it's really worth getting under your fingers. If you can do that, I would say that there's no need to really focus on exercises. You need to start getting into some more musical things.
Yeah, I agree.
Even then, as you're developing your legato technique, throw a jam track on and just, pick 4 notes out of the minor pentatonic scale and just go nuts with them and start using them in a musical context. And that's kind of the next point. It's apply legato to a scale at least, or a lick. In this case, since we're talking about jam tracks and getting to where you can use hammer-ons and pull-offs in the context of a scale or solo, pick a scale, preferably one that you're not already familiar with. Maybe like this week, I was working on that jam track, so maybe I'd pick a G Mixolydian scale. Yeah. But you could pick maybe a G major scale or G minor pentatonic scale. And just work on all of those things we talked about. The scale that's written on the PDF is just a G major scale.
Yep.
And that particular one is quite a stretch. I did that on
It
purpose
is.
so you could kind of apply the things we talked about as far as keeping your fingers planted or not keeping them planted. So pick, hammer on, right? If that's all you can do at the beginning, that's fine. Just worry about one string. Move to the next string. Once you're comfortable with that, do the same thing. It's the same pattern on that string. Just 3, 5, 7. 3, 5, 7 on the next string with your first, second, fourth fingers. So only worry about that at first, right? Then pull off the way back down. Pick, pull, pull, pick, pull, pull. Think about all those things. Keep the notes even. Are you hitting the notes hard enough to make the sound you want? Or are the notes kind of dying once you hit them? Take it one string at a time. Add notes in. And that sounds way different than this. I just picked every note in that scale, and it's a lot. It doesn't sound better or worse. It just sounds a little more punchy and not harsh, but more aggressive, I guess.
Yeah.
That's picked.
Yeah.
And that's legato.
Yeah. I find myself especially like really mixing them up depending on the texture I'm going for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, depending on the mood of the song.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. But all of these things, all those exercises, that scale, are all in the PDF. And one thing that I should mention to you, the way you can tell if you need to use hammer-ons and pull-offs when you're looking at a piece of tab or sheet music is if you see a slur over the notes or in between the two notes. All it is like a little arc going from one note to the other. That means don't pick all those notes. Maybe just pick the first one if it has a picking indicator and hammer on or pull off to the subsequent notes that the little arc is going over.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. So we got a bunch of questions, so we'll
Good.
jump right into that. Sweet. All right. Let's start with one from the forums just to kick it off. So this one, I was talking to Law LaFleur in the forums there, and he was saying, let me just make sure I have the full thing here. Basically, can't get the pull-off thing to work. How are you supposed to do that with any type of speed? Because it's not really just a lift.
Right.
It's an actual little motion.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I meant to talk about. Let me get some distortion off. A lot of times I've seen people, like literally when they're first sitting down, like the first week playing guitar, and they're trying to do pull-offs, they do this.
Yeah.
Which sometimes it works.
Yep.
Sometimes it doesn't. Or if it does work, the best case is probably going to be pretty weak. Let me take this distortion off and makes it even more obvious. There you go, see, it just disappeared. You're not just lifting your finger off. You can either do one of the two methods that we mentioned. You can either lift off, like straight off, and then hammer on with the finger below. But a lot more commonly, you're going to see people do this. You're going to see you have that back finger planted there. They're going to pick, and they're going to use that finger that's initially down on that note to actually pick the note. So work on both of those. Work on pulling kind of down and out.
Yeah.
Literally, like if I were to play this up here, okay, it's hard to do, but it's like I'm plucking the string with my picking hand, right?
Exactly.
And you got the hammer on, so work on pulling down and out, or lifting up,
and then
or a combination of the two.
Yeah.
So that's, and again, divide the challenge of hammer-ons and pull-offs. Don't worry about scale shapes or anything. If, let's say, probably the most common pull-off for guitar players is pinky or third finger to index finger for a minor pentatonic, right?
Yeah.
So just worry about that. Work on that for like a week or two, put it to rest, and then you're going to be able to play through an entire scale using pull-offs. That's the best advice I have for you then.
Yeah. I just should add, because when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, I had no idea how to do legato, and I just was like, oh, I should learn how to play Thunderstruck. And so I would sit there, and I'll see if I can do it. I'm probably going to butcher this, but you can mute all your other strings, and you're only using it, like you don't use all your fingers at once. So it kind of becomes, you're just working on just the technique. So
yeah, right. And you have to, because you're not really picking.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the frets are.
You can do it. I mean, I could. You end up hitting a bunch of other strings, but what I found was with the open string, it was a little bit easier to get volume on my pull-off at first.
Yeah, that might be a good stepping stone. And it might be a good song for you to try and learn.
Yeah, just slow. Don't be afraid to just slow it right down. It's totally okay. You it's played pretty fast, and I know that Angus Young would tape his strings or remove all of his strings that he wasn't using for that song. Yeah. So don't feel like you have to play it super fast either.
Cool.
Okay. Next question here. This one is from Stefanira. Why does it sound like I am pulling the second note out of tune on a pull-off? I am fine with the Hammer-Ons as long as they are fast. Yeah, Hammer-Ons are not a problem. Slowly or moderately playing pull-offs are a struggle.
Okay.
Sorry, I should just say, I think he's saying he's good at pull-offs when they're fast, if it's like hammer and pull-off.
Okay.
But not as good if it's just pulling off
If it's just
slow.
a pull-off like,
yeah.
Instead of...
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. You're probably, I would guess you're doing it too hard. Or when you pull off, watch, your hand goes down when you pull off, right? And your index finger might want to follow like this. Right? Or if you do it really hard, you're just going to tense up. Yeah. So experiment with the minimum amount of force that you need to get that pull off to sound good. That's not enough. I can do a little more. There you go. Not to do it too hard.
Exactly.
What's probably happening as soon as you're, doing that pull off really hard, the rest of your hand is contracting and you're going.
Exactly.
Or when you pull down, the rest of your hand is following. So be really careful. Watch your index finger. Make sure it doesn't move, and only use enough force necessary to get that pull off to bring out appropriately.
Yeah. And if you want to cheat, go up a gauge in strings, because it'll be harder for your little extra motions to pull it out of tune.
Yeah, it's not going to be as pliable. Actually, need to tune that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, this next question is back from the forums, and this is from John Murphy. I'll wait until you're done tuning. Are you good? So, using hammer-ons and pull-offs in folk music.
Okay.
How are they used?
Initially, just hearing that, I would think...
That's what I would think, yeah.
Stuff like that, chordal stuff. Suspensions are a big pull-off. So if you have a D chord, actually there was a hammer-on and a pull-off right there. I just don't think about these things anymore. So if you have a D, I'm hammering on to the fourth of the scale, or which would make it a sus4 chord, then just pulling off.
Right.
So you want to make sure you do it hard enough to where the listener notices that there's that motion there, and hard enough on the pull off for the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing with it on the C chord or any chord with a third in it. You can always take that third, and if there's an open string a whole step below it, you can go down to the 2, and then hammer on. Same thing with the G.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, I want to make sure I'm getting everything here and I'm going between multiple places. Now, here we go. So from Tom's Vet, hi there, just wanted to say that when practicing a pentatonic scale legato, a huge difference for me was going from acoustic to electric. Yeah. So much easier, and your jam tracks at GL really help.
Yeah. I think that's the email that I was referencing earlier.
Okay.
I was watching a Steve Lukather interview on YouTube one time. He's like, I practice on acoustic all the time because when I go to electric, I just fly, And I've heard a lot of people say that. I do that. I did that this week because I knew I was like, I'm going to have a lot of legato stuff worked up. So I would start out each practice session maybe 5-10 minutes on acoustic, doing like these exercises
Yeah.
that we went through, and then moved to electric, and it was a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like the time to get my legato chops back up to where they normally are took a lot less time. But be careful if there's any pain. Stop. Just take a break and just go back to your electric. But if you're not just crazy about it and practice for an hour just doing legato exercises on your acoustic guitar, it should be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, but I agree 100%.
Yeah. Next question here from Piyajutsu. How well do hammer-ons and pull-offs work with acoustic guitar, just in general? Also, is it possible to break a string because of a pull-off?
I've never had it happen, but I would think it's possible.
It depends how old your string is.
I guess if you're doing like open string stuff, I guess it's possible, but unlikely unless your strings are just nasty, rusty, like you said, old.
A bend will do it,
Yeah.
or strumming really hard will do it, but I don't think the pull-off, it doesn't really cause
I would
that
be
much.
surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would too. Unless, if your strings are crazy old, then anything
Anything
you
is
blow
something.
on them and they'll break.
What was the first part of that question?
How well do hammer-ons and pull-offs just work on an acoustic guitar in general?
Really good. It just depends. It depends how strong your hands are and how much of the coordination you have down. It might be harder for you at first to play hammer-ons and pull-offs on an acoustic guitar just because generally acoustics have thicker strings on them, like 12 gauge strings, whereas most electric guitars have 9 or 10 gauge strings. So it might be harder at first, but they still work really well. They sound good. It just takes a little more effort to build it up to it. Yeah.
Especially if you're not doing scales and you're doing more of that chording stuff that Nate was talking about with the folk stuff, it's the same technique, but you're doing it with just different shapes. So it is going to feel a little bit different because your hand is maybe put in a different shape and you're doing it, but it's the same technique. Yeah. Next question. Doesn't look like this is a question, but this is from Catman.
Hey, Catman.
Not a question, but just a statement that this visual teaching sure beats that correspondence course I took several decades ago.
Correspondence course? Like,
I wouldn't know.
I don't know. Well,
I'm
Good,
happy
yeah.
to hear that.
Well, that's one thing I like about having the live lesson every week. If you have any questions, we can actually show you and give you some feedback on what's going on. And hopefully, you're just going to be taking that to the next level more and more as we go.
And just remember, especially those of you guys who maybe haven't asked questions before, you're just kind of lurking and watching behind the scenes while we do this.
That would be neat.
Feel free to ask us questions about anything. Send them in a week before on a lesson.
Yeah.
Like we get to literally 99% of them in most cases. So if you have any questions, just let us know. We'll try and answer them in a live lesson. Okay, we have 3 more questions. This one is from Bean Jammin'. Happy belated Canada Day.
Oh, thank you.
And we should also say Happy July
Happy 4th of July,
to all of our
everyone.
American friends.
Yeah, I hope you have a lot of barbecue and fun family times today.
Well, that sounds really nice.
Uh-huh.
Do you all have any tips on doing pull-offs from the first string to the open strings? I can't seem to be able to do that specific one without it sounding like a mistake rather than something intentional.
Maybe it means first fret to the open string?
My guess would just be any from the first string to the open strings.
It's got to be fret.
I think so, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
I don't really have a problem with it on electric. On acoustic, I probably would just because there's a lot of tension at the nuts, just like making an F bar chord, right? If you're having a problem with something, with anything in particular, doesn't even have to be this topic we're talking about, really isolate it for several days. Even if it's only 5 minutes a day, spend some time. Don't even worry about making a chord. Don't worry about playing a scale. And just really observe. Get a mirror or videotape yourself if you have to. And that might help.
Yeah.
I hope this is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
One thing that I am noticing as I do that, my index finger is running into the other strings a lot more.
Right. Right.
So I have to make extra sure that I'm keeping the high strings quiet with these fingers, and then the lower strings quiet with the palm of my hand right here. So, because I guess I need more velocity to make that note ring out properly.
It could be like something like
maybe
something like that. Maybe. One little trick is hide behind compression. As I keep telling people how to not do it properly, and distortion and stuff like that. It'll smooth out any of those things that maybe jump a little bit.
Make sure your guitar is set up good.
Yeah,
or
that
properly.
makes such a difference.
Good. Making sure it's good.
You got good grammar.
Yeah.
Yeah, hope that helps.
Cool.
2 more questions. This one is from Les Acadians.
Hey, Les.
Okay, hold on. He says, don't. Oh, he's just asking. He says, "Where's Rick?"
Rick is probably exercising, I would guess. He's been doing a lot of exercising lately. That's all.
That's exactly what I've heard too. Okay, we've got the last question.
Cool.
When you pull off, do you mute the adjacent strings? If yes, can you show how?
100%. I will show you on maybe this cam for the left hand. Let's see. Okay, so pull off. My index finger is muting the A string right there. I'm playing the D string. My index finger is also curving over and muting as many of the high strings as possible. Let's see how many. Pretty well all of them. So the only string that's not being muted by my left hand is the low E. Now, to ensure that nothing is going to ring out as much as possible, my fingers on my picking hand are almost always, unless they're being played, are almost always sitting here. Pinky on the high E, third finger on the B, middle finger on the G. And then, in this case, the palm of my hand right here is laying on the low E and the A strings. Strum my guitar. Just reach over and hit all 6 strings.
Over here?
Yeah. So only you hear thumpy noise, but all you hear
only hearing that note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good experiment to do. Maybe pick through
Yeah.
all 6 strings. You can get somebody to just. You'll be able to tell if you're hearing this. So here's no muting. Ooh. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
That same muting technique is great, even just for playing.
Yeah.
Right? You can hit all the strings and just one note. Stevie Ray Vaughan did that a ton.
Tons. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people really don't like the sound of it. I think it sounds great.
I think it sounds really good. I think it makes it sound fat.
Okay. Well, that's it for questions.
Cool.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about or anything like that?
What do we have going on next week?
We
I
have.
don't even. Oh, yes, I do know.
Yes, we have Jacob Weens is going to come out and he is going to be teaching a full members area course, which is going to be wicked. He's going to be doing the live lesson as well and a bunch of little other kind of things on Facebook and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to be really cool. He is an incredible jazz and jazz and finger style is probably the best way to put it. And the topic is practicing with improv.
Yeah.
I butcher that word every time, so I'm just going to say improv. Practicing with improvisation. And that's going to be a cool one. It's not just for jazz and not just for fingerstyle.
But he is a way different player than I am, so I'm really excited for you guys to be able to ask him lots of questions. So get your questions in early. Don't be timid. Doesn't matter what the subject is. I know a lot of you guys in the forum even want to get into jazz more, which this is a really good opportunity for that.
It's the best opportunity. This is a professional jazz player. He knows everything. I think he has a degree in music, like a master's degree in music theory or something crazy like that. So
awesome.
He knows a lot of stuff. I'm going to even have questions for him. It's going to be good. Okay, well, do you think that maybe we should play out a little jam?
I have a progression that in my mind.
Do you actually?
I do.
It sounds like we planned this. We didn't plan this.
No, I literally, you said a song or an artist while ago, and I was like, oh, yep, that's the progression. So
Okay.
It's an A minor.
Okay, well then we'll do it to play out.
1, 2, 3, 4.